So these are the learning objectives for the lecture. So, what is meant by structural proteins? Today's lecture will focus on two proteins known as collagen and elastin, and both these proteins are key proteins of the extracellular matrix present in the connective tissues at various sites of the body. So, collagen and elastin, they are part of the extracellular matrix and they perform very important structural roles in the extracellular matrix. These are synthesized in the fibroblasts of connective tissues and perform various functions such as rigid or elastic structure formation, cell adhesion, tissue repair, etc. And another point to note about these two proteins, collagen and elastin, is that both of them are fibrous proteins. And by fibrous proteins, we mean that they are present at different sites of the body in the form of either long fibrils or in the form of long sheets. And another way to define fibrous proteins is that their axial ratio is greater than 10. And what is meant by axial ratio? It is simply the ratio of length of a protein to the width of the protein. So in case of fibrous proteins, the length of the protein is much greater than their width. Therefore, their axial ratio would be greater than 10 and they would be termed as fibrous proteins. On the other hand, in case of globular proteins, the axial ratio would be less than 10 because their length is much smaller than their width or breadth. So first of all, we are going to talk about collagen. So collagens are a family of fibrous proteins with 25 different types found in multicellular animals. And they are the most abundant proteins found in mammals. In fact, collagen is the most abundant protein found in human body. And different collagen molecules are termed as type 1 collagen, type 2 collagen, type 3 collagen, and so on. And the main function of collagen molecules, once again, is to provide structural support to tissues. In fact, collagen molecules are quite stiff and they often provide great tensile strength to the tissues where they are present. So this slide shows the organization of most abundant types of collagens into different groups based on their location and functions in the body. As you can see, collagen molecules can be broadly divided into three groups. First is fibril forming group, network forming group, and the third one is fibril associated group. And in the fibril forming groups, we have collagen type 1, type 2 collagen, and type 3 collagen. So what is meant by fibril forming group? As the name indicates, these collagen molecules, these three types of collagen molecules, they are arranged in the form of long fibers. And type 1 collagen is present in skin, bone, tendons, blood vessels, cornea, but mainly it is most abundant in bones. And type 2 collagen molecules, which again are fibril forming molecules, they are present in mostly in cartilaginous structures. They are also found in vitreous body of the eye. And type 3 collagen molecules, which are also arranged in the form of fibers, long fibers, they are mostly present in blood vessels and also in fetal skin. So the first group of collagen molecules, it includes type 1, type 2 and type 3 collagen molecules. Type 1 is most abundant in bones and tendons. Type 2 is mostly present in cartilaginous structures and type 3 is mostly present in blood vessels. Now the second group is termed as network forming collagen, and these type of collagen molecules, they are arranged in the form of a meshwork. They do not form long fibers. Instead, the collagen molecules form a kind of meshwork or network. And these include type 4 collagen, which is present in basement membrane of epithelial cells. Type 7 molecules, type 7 collagen, which is present beneath stratified squamous epithelia. So it is also a part of basement membrane, especially of stratified squamous epithelia. Now the third group is termed as fibril associated collagen, and it includes type 9 and type 12 collagen. And what is meant by fibril associated? These type of collagen molecules are present on the surface of fibril forming collagens. And what is their function? They serve to connect these fibril forming collagens to neighboring molecules in the extracellular matrix. So this slide shows the arrangement of collagen fibers in various tissue. For example, in case of tendon, collagen fibers or collagen molecules form parallel bundles to provide tensile strength to the tendinous tissue. In case of skin, sheets of fibrils layered at many angles without crosslinks are present to provide hyperextensibility. In case of bone, collagen fibers are arranged at an angle to each other so as to resist mechanical shear from any direction. In cartilage, there is no distinct arrangement. They may be present in different sorts of arrangement. Whereas in cornea, planar sheets stacked crossways so as to minimize light scattering. So in case of cornea, which is the outermost transparent structure of the eye, the collagen fibers are present in the form of long sheets in such a way that they do not cause light scattering and allow light to enter through them. So the arrangement of collagen fibers in different types of tissues determines the kind of function collagen molecule is playing at different sides of the body. In case of tendon, for example, it is providing tensile strength. In case of bone, it is providing tensile strength and preventing mechanical damage from any kind of force. In case of cornea, it is minimizing light scattering, and in case of skin, it provides the arrangement of collagen fibers provides hyperextensibility. So now we are going to discuss the structure of collagen in a bit more detail. A typical collagen molecule is a long and rigid structure in which three collagen polypeptide chains, also known as alpha chains, are wound around one another in a rope like superhelix or triple helix. So as you can see in this figure, there are three polypeptide chains which in the case of collagen are known as collagen alpha chains. And these three alpha chains, they are wound around each other in the form of a triple helix. Why triple helix? Because three polypeptide chains are involved, and this triple helical structure resembles the structure of a rope. And these alpha chains inside the collagen molecule are wound around each other in such a way that it gives great strength to the collagen molecule, and in this way collagen is able to provide tensile strength to different connective tissues where it is present. Okay, another point to remember is that this triple helix, the mature form of triple helix is known as tropocollagen, and tropocollagen is the basic unit of collagen. So whenever collagen is present, whether in the form of long fibers or long sheets, the basic unit of structure would be this triple helical structure known as tropocollagen. So collagen is rich in glycine and proline. These are two amino acids. Glycine is the smallest amino acid which you need to remember, and collagen is rich in glycine as well as proline. And it also differs from other proteins because it contains hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine, which are non-standard amino acids, which means that they do not participate in protein formation. So what happens is that when the alpha chains, polypeptide chains of collagen are formed, proline and lysine is present in the structure, but after the polypeptide peptide chain has been synthesized, some of the proline and some of the lysine residues, they undergo hydroxylation or post-translational modification, and they are turned into hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. So hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine are a result of post-translational modification of collagen polypeptide chains, and these two amino acids are abundant in collagen and they are mostly not present in other proteins. So this is a distinguishing feature of collagen from other proteins. And another point to remember is that collagen is very abundant in glycine. In fact, if you look closely at the composition of collagen polypeptide chains, you will learn that collagen polypeptide chain is basically composed of a repeating tripeptide, which can be written as glycine XY, in which every third amino acid is going to be glycine, and X represents either proline or hydroxyproline, and at Y position either hydroxyproline or hydroxylysine is going to be present. So glycine XY, you can say, is the basic structure of a collagen polypeptide chain, and this means that collagen is abundant in glycine because every third amino acid is going to be glycine, and it has a very structural significance which we will discuss later. And X represents either proline or hydroxyproline, and Y represents either hydroxyproline or hydroxylysine. So collagen is abundant in glycine, proline, hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. So as we have discussed, collagen is rich in glycine, and glycine, you should be knowing that it is the smallest amino acid. And what is the significance of this high amount of glycine in collagen? Glycine, because of its small structure, is able to accommodate itself in spaces, very restricted and small spaces where other amino acids wouldn't be able to accommodate. So because of glycine, because it is able to fit into small restricted spaces in the structure of collagen, this allows for very tight packing of this triple helical structure. If, for example, instead of glycine some other larger amino acid would be present, then the uh, structure of this triple helix would be more extended. It wouldn't be as tightly packed as this, because, and why it is so tightly packed, because glycine is the smallest amino acid and it is able to fit into very small, limited and restricted spaces. And what is the significance of proline in the alpha polypeptide chains of collagen? Proline creates kinks or bends in the structure of these polypeptide chains, and because of these bends or kinks, the helical conformation of alpha polypeptide chains are stabilized. As we have discussed before, hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine are two non-standard amino acids which are present in collagen but not present in most other proteins. And these two amino acids are a result of post-translational modification. And what type of post-translational modification? Hydroxylation of some prolyl and some of the lysyl residues. So this post-translational hydroxylation of proline and lysine residues requires molecular oxygen, iron and a coenzyme which is known as vitamin C or ascorbic acid. And the enzymes required for these reactions are prolyl hydroxylase and lysyl hydroxylase. So in the absence of vitamin C, which is a very important coenzyme for these hydroxylation reactions, in the absence of vitamin C, these hydroxylases would not be able to perform their function, as a result of which hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine would not be formed. And when hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine are removed from the structure of collagen, then it gives rise to a very weak collagen structure. And because of this, a lot of clinical signs and symptoms are manifested, and it leads to a condition known as scurvy. So vitamin C leads to a condition called scurvy, which we will discuss later in detail. Now we move on to this figure. As you can see, this is a proline or prolyl residue present in the alpha polypeptide chain of collagen. And in the presence of prolyl hydroxylase, ascorbate or vitamin C and iron, it is and oxygen, it is being converted or hydroxylated to hydroxyprolyl. So this hydroxylation reaction requires a hydroxylase enzyme, molecular oxygen, iron, and a very important coenzyme known as ascorbate or vitamin C. So what is the importance or purpose of hydroxyproline? Now these Uh, a collagen, as you know, is composed of three polypeptide chains which are wound around each other to form a triple helix. And this triple helix or tropocollagen is the basic unit of collagen. So, how is this triple helical structure is formed or stabilized? It is formed due to the presence of hydrogen bonds between the three polypeptide chains. And hydroxyproline, it serves to increase the hydrogen bonding between the three polypeptide alpha chains of collagen. So in the absence of hydroxyproline, the hydrogen bond formation between the collagen polypeptide chains would be reduced, resulting in an unstable collagen structure. That is why presence of hydroxyproline in collagen polypeptide chains is very important. And normal collagen is stable even at 40 degrees centigrade, even at above the normal body temperature in case of humans. And but if the hydrogen bonding between the three polypeptide chains of collagen are disrupted due to the absence of hydroxyproline, then the collagen helix would become very unstable. It would lose most of its helical content at temperatures above 20 degrees centigrade. But normally, when hydroxyproline is present, normal collagen is stable even at a high temperature of 40 degree centigrade. So what is the purpose of hydroxylysine? First of all, hydroxylysine residues, they can be glycosylated as can be shown in this diagram. This is a hydroxylysine residue, and it can form bonds with galactose and glucose. Secondly, lysine residues present in the alpha polypeptide chains, they can also undergo oxidation and deamination to form reactive aldehyde derivatives. So this is a lysine residue. In the presence of an enzyme known as lysyl oxidase and oxygen, it can be converted into a reactive aldehyde derivative. And this process also involves deamination or removal of amine group. And these reactive aldehyde derivatives, they can spontaneously react with lysine residues or hydroxylysine or oxidized lysine within the same tropocollagen molecule or in the neighboring tropocollagen molecules. And when these aldehyde derivatives form bonds with hydroxylysine residues or lysyl residues or oxidized lysyl residues, when they form bond with these residues in neighboring tropocollagen molecules, this results in the formation of cross links. And these cross links are present between different molecules of collagen or tropocollagen, and it serves to even strengthen the structure of collagen even more. So due to the presence of cross links, the tensile strength of collagen fibrils increases, and those cross links are formed because of aldehyde derivatives which are derived from lysine. So again, what is the importance of covalent cross linking which is present in collagen structure? The cross links stabilize the side by side packing of collagen molecules and generate a strong fibril. And if cross linking is inhibited, the tensile strength of the fibrils is reduced, collagenous tissues become fragile, and structures such as skin, tendons, and blood vessels tend to tear. And another interesting fact is that the amount of cross linking in a tissue increases with age, and that is why meat from older animals is tougher than meat from younger animals. This slide shows the formation of collagen fibers. As you can see, this is a tropocollagen molecule which is composed of three polypeptide alpha chains wound around one another by means of hydrogen bonding. And tropocollagen is in the form of a triple helix because three polypeptide chains participate in helical formation. Now this is one tropocollagen molecule, this is another, and this is another. And these molecules are arranged in such a way that they overlap each other, and this is known as staggered pattern of collagen fibril arrangement. So this is a staggered pattern because different collagen molecules are overlapping each other. And as you can see, these cross links are present between individual tropocollagen molecules, and because of the presence of these cross links, the structure of collagen fibers possesses great strength. And as you can see in this uh, part of the figure, different tropocollagen molecules have arranged themselves in a staggered pattern and formed a fibril. And now these fibrils, they arrange themselves in the form of even bigger fibers or fascicles whose diameter ranges around 10 micrometers. So first of all, we get tropocollagen molecules which arrange themselves in the form of fibrils, and in the fibrils, individual tropocollagen molecules, they are linked together by means of cross links, and this gives great tensile strength to the structure of collagen. And these collagen fibrils arrange themselves in an even bigger arrangement known as collagen fibers of fascicles whose diameter ranges around 10 micrometer. So now we are going to discuss a disorder known as scurvy. Now, scurvy is a disease caused by a dietary deficiency of ascorbic acid or vitamin C, resulting in defective connective tissue formation. And why a deficiency of vitamin C causes defective connective tissue formation? Because vitamin C is required for the hydroxylation of proline and lysine residues present in the polypeptide chains of collagen. And when proline and lysine undergo hydroxylation, they give rise to hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. And as you know, hydroxyproline is required for hydrogen bond formation among the three polypeptide chains of a tropocollagen molecule. And hydroxylysine and lysine, they participate in cross link formation between individual tropocollagen molecules. So in case of deficiency of vitamin C, hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine are not formed, and this results in an unstable structure of collagen, which is not able to support the different connective tissues where it is present. So the defective pro-alpha chains fail to form a stable triple helix and are immediately degraded within the cell. Blood vessels become extremely fragile and may bleed. There is hemorrhage and swollen gums with loss of teeth if untreated. So blood vessels, as you know, they contain collagen. So in the absence of normal collagen molecules, blood vessels will become extremely fragile and they will be bleeding. And in case of gums, gums will become swollen and spongy and they will be bleeding. So a very key feature of vitamin C deficiency or scurvy is swollen spongy gums with bleeding from the mouth. And another important feature of scurvy is extensive bruising on the lower limbs or legs, and this is also because of the fragility of blood vessels wall. And they're also delayed wound repair and healing, all because of defective collagen synthesis in the absence of vitamin C, because in the absence or deficiency of vitamin C, hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine are not being formed, and both these amino acids are required for stable structure of or stable helical structure of tropocollagen. Now we are going to discuss a group of diseases known as collagen diseases or collagenopathies. Now these collagenopathies are caused by mutations in genes which code for different types of collagen. In fact, more than 1000 mutations have been identified in 23 genes which code for 13 types of collagen. And first among those diseases or collagenopathies is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, also known as EDS. Now, EDS is basically a heterogeneous group of generalized connective tissue disorders in which signs and symptoms may vary according to the type of mutation which is occurring in the patient. And mutations in case of EDS cause defects in the metabolism of collagen molecules, and these, as a result of these mutations, there may be a deficiency of collagen processing enzymes such as lysyl oxidase, which is involved in eventually cross-link formation. Or these mutations can also result in changes in the sequence of amino acids in the alpha polypeptide chains of different collagen types. So different types of mutations are associated with EDS, and according to the type of mutations and the type of defect they are causing, the signs and symptoms of EDS may vary. For example, the classic form of EDS is caused by defects in type 5 collagen, and it is characterized by skin hyperextensibility and skin fragility and joint hypermobility. As you can see, these two pictures represent the classic form of EDS, and in this you can see the hyperextensibility or stretchiness of the skin, and the skin in such patients is also very fragile. Secondly, this is also the classic form of EDS in which joint hypermobility can be seen. As you can see, this finger joint can be bent all the way backwards. Normally, this type of hypermobility is not present, but in classic form of EDS, due to mutations, this joint hypermobility can be seen due to abnormal formation of collagen fibrils. Now, there is another clinically important type of EDS which is the most lethal form of EDS, and it is known as the vascular form. In the vascular form of EDS, blood vessels are very fragile due to defective formation of type 3 collagen. As you can recall, type 3 collagen is most abundant in blood vessels. So in case of mutations in genes which code for type 3 collagen, the type 3 collagen structure is going to be abnormal, and this results in fragile blood vessels, and it is a very lethal form of EDS because due to the fragility of blood vessel wall, arterial aneurysms and arterial ruptures are very common. Now we are going to discuss another collagenopathy known as osteogenesis imperfecta, which is also written as OI. Now, osteogenesis imperfecta is also a heterogeneous group of inherited disorders in which structurally abnormal chains prevent folding of the protein into a triple helical conformation. So, it is a heterogeneous group of disorders, which means that the symptoms and signs of this disease may vary from relatively mild to very severe. And in this type of collagenopathy, mutations occur which result in formation of abnormal alpha polypeptide chains, and these abnormal chains cannot form a stable triple helical structure. Most patients with severe disease have mutations in the gene for type 1 collagen. So, in the severe form of this disease, type 1 collagen is affected, and it is a lethal form of the disease, which means that it is not compatible with life. Fractures appear in utero and stillbirth occur, and this lethal form of osteogenesis imperfecta is known as type 2 osteogenesis imperfecta. And in type 1 osteogenesis imperfecta, there is decreased production of two of the alpha polypeptide chains of collagen. And in this form of the disease, fractures also occur secondary to minor trauma in early infancy. But as you can see, this type of the disorder is compatible with life. It is not the lethal form of the disease, but still in type 1 osteogenesis imperfecta, fractures occur very frequently and as a result of minor trauma, and it is very traumatic for the baby as well as their parents. Now we are going to discuss another fibrous protein which is a key component of extracellular matrix of different types of connective tissue, and it is known as elastin. And as the name indicates, it is an elastic protein. And why elastin is important for us? This is because many tissues in our body, such as skin, blood vessels, and lungs, they need to be both strong and elastic at the same time in order to function. In the absence of elasticity, these tissues would tear apart very easily as a result of different types of stretching forces that are being exerted on them. So, a network of elastic fibers in the extracellular matrix of these tissues gives them the required resilience so that they can recoil after transient stretch. Long, inelastic collagen fibrils are interwoven with the elastic fibers to limit the extent of stretching and to prevent the tissue from tearing. So, in these types of body tissues or connective tissues, there is a mixture of long inelastic collagen fibrils which are interwoven with the elastic fibers. So these tissues are both resilient as well as elastic in nature, and this is how they are able to function as well as they can. Now we are going to discuss the composition of elastic fibers and the structure of elastin. So the main component of elastic fibers is elastin, and elastin is a fibrous protein which is rich in non-polar amino acids. So it is a highly hydrophobic protein, and some of the amino acids which are abundantly present in elastin are proline, glycine, alanine, valine, and lysine. And it also contains some hydroxyproline but no hydroxylysine, and this is very important because hydroxylysine is present in collagen but it is absent in elastin. And the primary component or the basic unit of elastin is tropoelastin molecule. Now this tropoelastin is a polypeptide rich in non-polar amino acids, and this tropoelastin polypeptide is secreted from the cells of the connective tissue, and outside the cells in the extracellular matrix it interacts with the specific glycoprotein known as fibrillin, and this fibrillin acts as an anchor on which tropoelastin molecules are deposited, and the interaction between fibrillin and tropoelastin leads to the formation of insoluble microfibrils. So in the absence of this protein, this glycoprotein fibrillin, uh, elastin microfibrils will not be able to form, and this will result in abnormal structure of elastin. So as you can see, these are elastic fibers in which tropoelastin is present. These individual polypeptide chains, these are known as elastin molecules or tropoelastin, and as you can see they are linked together by means of cross links. So in case of elastin, this cross link is a special type of cross link known as desmosine cross links, and in case of elastin there is extensive cross link formation, and these desmosine cross links are basically, you can say, acting as rubber bands. Because of the presence of these cross links, we can stretch or contract this elastin molecule by applying force, and whenever the force is removed, these fibers will recoil back to their original conformation, so just like a rubber band. So these desmosine crosslinks, you can say, they are acting as rubber bands in case of elastin, and that is why wherever elastin is present, the tissue is stretchable. So lysine residues are oxidized and cross-linked to one another, forming desmosine crosslinks. Just like in collagen, in case of elastin, lysine residues are also oxidized and deaminated by an enzyme known as lysyl oxidase, resulting in formation of reactive aldehyde derivatives. And those reactive aldehyde derivatives, they are going to react with each other and with lysine residues in such a way that a special type of crosslink is formed, which is known as desmosine crosslinks. And these desmosine crosslinks are quite extensive in the structure of elastin, and because of these extensive cross linking, the elastin structure is very much stretchable. Now we are going to discuss different disorders related to elastin. First of all, we are going to discuss a syndrome known as Marfan syndrome, which is also caused by heritable mutations, and it is characterized by mutations in the gene which codes for fibrillin 1 protein. So whenever the gene encoding fibrillin 1 protein is mutated, it results to formation of abnormal fibrillin, and this abnormal fibrillin 1 protein will not be able to interact with topoelastin molecules to form elastic microfibrils, and this gives rise to a myriad of clinical signs and symptoms. For example, in eyes, there will be dislocation of the lens known as ectopia lentis. There may be blue sclera due to tissue thinning showing color of underlying pigment. In the skeletal system, effects will also be present. Most patients suffering from Marfan syndrome are tall and exhibit long digits, and a condition which is known as arachnodactyly, and there will also be hyperextensibility of joints. So whenever you will see pictures of patients who are suffering from Marfan syndrome, you will be able to detect arachnodactyly because their digits are quite long and prominent. So long prominent digits are a feature of Marfan syndrome, and such patients who suffer from Marfan syndrome, they also exhibit cardiovascular abnormalities because of the dilatation of ascending aorta, because elastin will be abnormal in aortic media, resulting in weakness of this layer of aorta. So this Marfan syndrome is very important from an examination point of view. You should be knowing that it is caused by mutation in the gene which codes for the glycoprotein fibrillin 1, and because of this mutation, fibrillin 1 protein will be abnormal in structure and will not be able to interact properly with tropoelastin molecules, and in this way elastic microfibrils will not be formed, resulting in a variety of signs and symptoms. So another disorder related with elastin is alpha 1 antitrypsin deficiency, and more specifically it is related with elastin degradation. So in the alveoli of lungs, elastase enzyme is responsible for breakdown of elastin which is present in the alveolar walls, and this elastase enzyme is released almost continually by activated and degenerating neutrophils, and this release elastase, if its activity is not inhibited or kept in check, then it would damage or break down the elastin present in the alveolar walls, resulting in damage to the alveolar walls. Therefore, normally in the alveoli, alpha 1 antitrypsin is present, and this is an enzyme which inhibits the activity of elastase. So normally there is a balance between elastase and alpha 1 antitrypsin activity, which prevents damage to the elastin which is present in alveolar wall. So if alpha 1 antitrypsin is deficient, then in that case elastase would degrade elastin which is present in the alveolar walls. In this way, there will be a significant damage to the walls of alveoli, resulting in dilated non-functional alveoli. So, whenever alpha antitrypsin deficiency occur, alveolar function is disturbed because of damage to the elastin which is present in the alveolar walls, and it leads to a condition known as emphysema, which is characterized by chronic cough. So, in patients who are suffering from alpha 1 antitrypsin deficiency, these patients can and develop a condition known as emphysema, and this condition is worsened by smoking, because smoking itself causes damage to alveolar walls and also leads to emphysema on its own. So, when alpha 1 antitrypsin deficiency and smoking are combined, it will lead to disastrous results. And the deficiency of alpha 1 antitrypsin can be reversed by weekly intravenous administration of alpha 1 antitrypsin enzyme. So this was all about structural proteins which are present in the extracellular matrix of connective tissue at different sites of the body. If you have any query, you can mail me. And a word of advice, kindly study this topic thoroughly from your book, because it is very important from your examination point of view. Best of luck from my side, and thank you.